of jobs and help move goods and services as the city's economy recovers.
Question number 8, the Honourable Clayton Cosgrove.
Mr Speaker, my question is to the Minister for Canterbury Earthquake Recovery and asks, how many of the 5,100 properties in the red zone have been deemed to be uneconomic to repair by the insurer, and how many of those approximately had unimproved land valuations of less than $150,000?
The Honourable Maurice Williamson.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister for Canterbury Earthquake Recovery, those numbers and assessments are still being finalised. The full extent of the damage to houses beyond the EQC cap of $100,000 plus GST is confidential to the homeowner and their individual insurer and is for insurers to assess. For that reason, the Government is offering to purchase properties in the most damaged areas at capital value to enable homeowners to move on quickly rather than waiting years for their claims to be resolved. This offer to purchase properties at 2007 rating valuation is a fair and balanced one, which the New Zealand Institute of Valuers agrees with. The land rating valuations for all these properties in Christchurch are available on the Christchurch City Council website.
The Honourable Clayton Cosgrove.
So, Minister, given that answer, what advice enabled him to claim in answer to oral question 9 last Wednesday regarding preserving the equity of earthquake victims that the Government believes that, quote, in the vast bulk of cases, unquote, the financial offer will achieve that, when he says he doesn't have those figures?
The Honourable Maurice Williamson.
Well, Mr Speaker, there's a very big difference between the vast bulk of and having the absolute detail. I still believe, and the Government still believes, that the offer we have made is a fair and balanced, and the vast bulk of properties that we know of at this point show that, in fact, the 2007 rating valuation is a fair and balanced offer.
The Honourable Clayton Cosgrove.
How is it fair and reasonable to base the land-only offer on a value that has no relationship to market value, given that it is what remains when the improvements are subtracted from the capital value of the property?
The Honourable Maurice Williamson.
Mr Speaker, I'm sorry, the member doesn't seem to get the answer every time I reply. The Government has worked its way carefully through this. We think the most open figure that everyone knows about, a figure that everyone got a copy of and knows what it was, is their 2007 rating valuation. There is lots of evidence to show that since that date, properties prices were going down in terms of the transaction and sale, and that, sir, one thing I think the member is missing, that the offer the Government has made is voluntary, and people don't have to take the offer.
The Honourable Ruth Dyson.
How is it fair, balanced and reasonable that his red zone package will leave many elderly people, not outliers as he intimated last week, with a significant shortfall between the rateable value on their property and the purchase price of anything comparable, and that couple unable to borrow money?
The Honourable Maurice Williamson.
Well, Mr Speaker, one of the factors I think members need to take into account is what interest rates on mortgages would be. And if we were going back to 2007, sir, I can tell the member that the mortgage interest rate at that time was 10.1%. Sir, right now the banks are offering a 4-year fixed at 6.45, but in Canterbury, sir, I'm told that at least one bank is offering around 3.6%. Now, Mr Speaker, if you take that on a $200,000 mortgage, those people will be substantially better off than they would have been holding a mortgage back in 2007.
Point of order, the Honourable Ruth Dyson.
My question asked specifically about a couple who are in the situation where they had a significant shortfall between their red zone rateable value and a comparable purchase price, and who were unable to borrow money. So for the Minister to then recall what the 2007 interest rates are and this year's interest rates are is irrelevant. The question was not addressed.
Well, I know I listened very carefully, and for a start I was somewhat of the member's view, but it seemed to me the Minister was pointing out that he can't assess whether or not a person can or cannot borrow money, but he was pointing out that today, compared with 2007 when the valuations were based, it is cheaper for people to borrow money today, and therefore they may be able to borrow money today on unlimited incomes. Now, certainly I accept not the answer the member would have expected, but I've got to be careful not to prevent ministers from answering a question the way they see. Now, the member has a further supplementary to dig into that, and I'm reluctant sometimes to ask a member to give a particular answer on a first attempt to get an answer out of a minister. I accept, though, that the member has some grounds for being aggrieved, but there is a further supplementary there, obviously.
To that
I'll hear
point
the
of
member.
order, just to reiterate the point, Mr. Speaker, that my question was specifically about people who were unable to borrow money, but I'll take your advice and go on to my second supplementary if you didn't hear that part of my question.
Well, I did actually hear that part of the question, but when it's alleged that people are unable to borrow money in a question, who says? And the minister was interpreting that, I think, that way, that who says a person can't borrow money? Banks may determine someone who couldn't borrow money at 10% can borrow it at 6%. And that kind of assertion in a question, I can't insist a minister answer in a particular way.
It's helpful anyway.
The Honourable Ruth Dyson.
How is it fair, balanced and reasonable for many people, not outliers, as he said in answer to questions last week, for people in a brand new home with minor earthquake damage who are living in the red zone, so required to move, not repair, are now told by their insurance company that they will only be paid the price of repairing their home, not replacing it? How is that fair, balanced and reasonable?
The Honourable Maurice Williamson.
Well, sort of two answers to that, Mr. Speaker. One, that is why the government has put on the table the offer we have. And secondly, the second part of the answer is that member herself said the day after the government offered the package in the Christchurch Press that the offer was fair.
Amy Adams.
Speaker, to the Minister, what reports has he seen on the public reaction to the government's package for affected residents in the Greater Christchurch residential red zone?
The Honourable Maurice Williamson.
Mr. Speaker, in addition to the large volume of positive letters and emails received by the Minister for Canterbury Earthquake Recovery and the Earthquake Authority, other government MPs, on 3 News on Monday night, the results of a Reed Research poll were reported. This poll found that 72% of New Zealanders nationally and 76% of people in Christchurch agreed with the government's earthquake package.
Brendon Burns, supplementary question.
Supplementary question to the Minister. Given the average new section price around Christchurch usually starts at around $150,000, how would having to pay that price preserve equity for constituents of mine whose red zone land is valued below $150,000?
The Honourable Maurice Williamson.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I think the key word in the question the member asked was usually, because I can say usually and average doesn't apply in a whole range of these circumstances. And secondly, sir, I think using question time in this House to negotiate specific individual household deals in terms of what value may be is not the right forum.
Point of order, Brendon Burns.
My question was quite specific around section prices and the preservation of equity. It did not relate to a specific individual, as the Minister's reply suggested.
What I'll do,
to answer the question?
I've got 2 aggrieved questioners now. I had the Honourable Ruth Dyson and the Honourable Brendon Burns, and I accept the Minister's answers have been on the edge. I'll invite the member to repeat his question, but in doing so he must make sure he asks an answerable question. Brendon Burns.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the Minister, given average new section prices around Christchurch usually start...
Order. I apologise, member. Can I say to Sandra Gowdy, please, if I'm to act as a referee, I have to be able to hear the question. The member has a commendably loud voice, and it's very difficult for me to hear. Brendon Burns, please, supplementary question. And now that is not a recipe for Labour members to start interjecting. Brendon Burns.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the Minister, given the average new section price around Christchurch usually starts at around $150,000, how would having to pay that price preserve equity for constituents of mine whose red zone land is valued well below $150,000.
The Honourable Maurice Williamson.
Mr Speaker, I repeat again, the key words to the member's question were average and usually, and therefore some land will be more than the average price, some will be less. The compensation package that we're offering to the people in the red zone is actually to pay them what their capital value or their rateable valuations were at the time of the 2007 rating valuation. And, sir, I think that everybody believes that is a fair and balanced package. It's actually on.
Is this a supplementary question?
Yes.
Brendon Burns.
Thank you. What does the Minister say to my elderly constituent living on River Road in Richmond, whose large section, as measured by the 2007 rating evaluation, is worth half per square metre the land of her neighbour, and how would that preserve her equity as repeatedly pledged?
The Honourable Maurice
Speaker,
Williamson.
I would say to that person the same I would say to every one of the other 5,100 property owners. They should sit down, they should get some advice, they should look at the government's package in great detail, and if they think it's a fair and balanced package, which we do, they should accept it and get out of there as quickly as they can.
Question number 9, the Honourable John Boscawen.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr Speaker.